Kia ora e te whānau. Ko Pamela Bell toku ingoa. I'm Pamela Bell. I'm the Chief Executive here at the Building Institute, Aotearoa. You may know us by our name, the New Zealand Institute of Building Incorporated. We're now trading as the Building Institute Aotearoa as of 1st of April 2025. It's a very interesting time. And we're here today talking about sustainability and, importantly, the ongoing relevance of sustainability in construction. We will be talking today about biomaterials, and we'll be talking about waste. We'll be talking particularly about how we can choose the right materials and how carbon counting and how data can help us verify our carbon footprint. We'll also be talking about what our commitment to sustainability looks like and what we all need to do as we keep moving towards a more sustainable long-term future for our built environment here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I'm joined today by Kristy Jones and Nick Gifford. Now, what you need to know is that Kristy is the Sustainability Manager at Cook Brothers Construction. They are a standout leader in environmental sustainability. She also won the Innovation or the OHA category at the 2024 New Zealand Building People Awards, which is the awards that we run. And what you need to know is that entries are now open for those awards for 2025. They'll be open until the 9th of May. I'm also joined by Nick Gifford, who is the National Strategic Sales Manager at Allied Concrete. He might say he's not a sustainability expert, but we're here to learn from him in the sustainability area nonetheless, because they've got some really interesting, innovative materials that he'll tell us about. Now, first of all, we'll go to them and hear a little bit about why sustainability, why you're interested in it and what it means to you. We'll start with you, Kristy.
Yes, so thank you, Pam. I'm Kristy from Sustainability Manager at Cook Brothers Construction. We're a nationwide construction company, and my role is sustainability and everything that entails. We take quite a broad, holistic approach to sustainability. So it's not just the environmental elements. So it's about balancing our people and our communities. So the social side, balancing our environmental impacts on our projects, what we're doing on site and the buildings that we're building and delivering, and then also from a more of a governance or industry perspective, what are we doing to providing feedback loops or just helping to build a stronger industry. Sustainability, it is a very broad topic. And one of my, it gets pretty wide.
Awesome. It's great to have that ESG acronym, environmental, social, governance, kind of explained, and to learn a bit more how that comes to life in your business. We'll learn a bit more in a minute. Nick, tell us a little bit about what draws you to sustainability, what it means to you.
Yeah, look, thanks, Pam. So I guess with Allied Concrete, we're on our own sustainability journey, it would be fair to say. It's probably, if I've been with Allied Concrete for 15 years, if I thought back 4 or 5 years ago, it's hard to imagine that we'd be sitting here trying to, or having conversations around sustainability in concrete. We're certainly acutely aware of the impact we have on the environment. And I guess that's sort of what's led us to where we are today, where, we are looking to or wanting to make changes. I'm wanting to make changes. I've certainly learned a lot, and I am learning a lot. And look, we see it as a really big opportunity for the market in the future. And ultimately, at the end of the day, from an Allied Concrete perspective, we're here to provide solutions that the market or customers want. And if that sort of helps us to make improvements within our own business, then that's a really good thing.
Awesome. I'll just stick with you for a minute, Nick, because you're talking about the products and things. And in our conversations, we were talking about the actual products you've got, plus the way you run your fleet of vehicles and things like that. Can you tell us a bit more about what Allied's doing?
Yeah, look, we're making progress in things in trying to reduce our carbon footprint. We're working on things like low carbon concrete, which we have solutions in the market now for. And the demand for that, it does tend to go up and down a little bit in terms of all of a sudden we get a very big rush in terms of demand for low carbon products, and then it very much can drop off very quickly as well. But we're certainly seeing in certain parts of the market there's a push for that sort of product. So for us, that's been a steep learning curve reasonably quickly over the last couple of years. But we do have a product in the market. We do use environmental product declarations. So these, and in fact, Allied Concrete were the first company in Australasia to have an EPD back in 2014. So we're reasonably familiar with, well, we're very familiar with EPDs. We've now moved to EPD on demand, which is a more project-specific version of EPD. And that actually also gives us the ability to demonstrate or publish the amount of embodied carbon used to deliver product to site. Whereas traditionally with EPDs, it's only to the gate of the concrete company, the materials, what the amount of energy used to produce it. Whereas now we can include delivering it to site. We think that's important. And we've seen a really big uptake on that. So we think that's really good. Yeah.
And you've talked before about terms like E30 or E50. Can you explain to us what those are, and in what situation would you use each of those types of concrete?
Yeah, look, I think how the authorities have sort of set we use the word rules, but it's possibly not the right word, but the lines for low carbon concrete is the Infrastructure Sustainability Council has set a baseline number, effectively an average carbon number based on strength for concrete across New Zealand. And so all the concrete companies that do produce a low carbon concrete, they provide low carbon concrete with reductions off those ISC baseline numbers. So when we talk about things like E30, our product's called eCrete. E30 for us is a 30% reduction from the ISC baseline. E50 is a 50% reduction. Now, when it comes to what products to use when, I think there's sort of two answers to that really. We tend not to say, tell us your target number, tell us the number you want. Our first sort of question is, what is it you're trying to achieve? Because the reality is there will be some negative aspects to using a highly reduced carbon concrete product. And we're in conversations at the moment with some clients who are moving into the space. We're trying to increase from an E30 to more like an E60. The reality is there are some issues around that from a program perspective. The concrete behaves differently. The guys that place the concrete will notice differences. So we tend to say, tell us what it is that you want to do. We'll tell you what's workable or what the impact might be from a dollar perspective or a build program perspective. So that tends to be how we use. But look, E30 is sort of the sweet spot, so to speak. It's very little impact.
So we'd love to see E30 become the norm. And I guess what we're hearing is the lower the carbon, the slightly longer to cure. So you just have to take that into account. Mm-hmm. And of course, this is all for the love of carbon counting. Kristy, can you tell us a little bit about how carbon counting is manifest in the materials that you're seeing being used at Cook Brothers, or how's carbon counting part of the vocabulary at your place?
So I guess carbon counting, it's a bit of a, I want to call it a bit of a dark art at the moment. Everyone's aware of carbon emissions and our greenhouse gas effects. It's just like, what does that actually mean? It's kind of this big waffly thing. But what actually is it? It's not very tangible. You can't really see it. So it makes it quite hard and quite complex when you start trying to get engagement from your team or your suppliers or whoever it is, when you start talking about what actually is embodied carbon, what it is, and how do we measure this, and what does it actually mean for our team on site. There's not any legislation around requiring it to be tracked or counted. There was some with the previous government, obviously there was some legislation earmarked to come in, part of the Building for Climate Change program, and that was going to require embodied carbon to be measured. by a certain date on all new build commercial projects, and then possibly reduction targets to be set for about 2030 onwards. That has gone quiet. So not too sure what is happening with that from a, I guess, wider industry or central government-led approach. But I guess from a project perspective at the moment, people are still gearing up for if that might come. We're aware that we're trying to obviously reduce what our emissions are in our projects. So there's a lot of emphasis at the design stage to reduce it. Things like concrete, steel, massive sources of embodied carbon. And there are so many new alternatives and products coming through that can just kind of reduce that total, reduce that long-term impact. And then that flows through to obviously what we're doing on site in terms of our methodology, how we're actually building, how are we getting materials to site, what waste are we creating, because waste to landfill, it's also a massive source of a greenhouse gas emission. And that then opens up the conversation about waste, another massive area.
Great. Can you step us through some specific things around waste that you're looking at?
Yeah, so waste is turning into a big topic for me at the moment. So construction waste is just about one of the largest sources of waste to landfill coming from our industry, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. That someone has purchased that materials, it's been manufactured or extracted, it's been manufactured, it's been handled, and now it's been buried at landfill. So it's a crazy amount of waste going to landfill every year. I'm currently running a bit of a case study project down here in Queenstown. We've got a commercial build project and literally doing a deep dive into waste. It's involved me auditing every single skip that's come off site, while we've got quite a lot of waste separation on site. I've been auditing every general waste skip. So I think I've sifted for about 32 tonnes of rubbish, all waste. Our waste partner down here, they tip it out at the yard, and I separate it into every single waste stream. The purpose behind it has been to try to work out what waste is coming off a commercial build. There's been a few case studies like this done on residential projects, but I'm not aware of something being done on a commercial scale. And to be honest, I can kind of see why, because there's just been so much so much time, so much waste, so much just the sheer scale of number of types of products that go into the build. It's a bit it's crazy. And so through this audit, I'm hoping to breaking it down into design-led waste. So 80% of waste is already that we make on site is already being dictated at the design stage before we've even started. So that's obviously if you're trying to follow the waste hierarchy, avoidance or reduce is at the top before you start reverting to recycling. So trying to identify what is design-led waste. What is contractor-led waste? So what are we making on site between whether it's us at Cook Brothers or our trade partners, and then what is supplier-led waste? So what's coming to site as packaging, so plastic, poly, cardboard, strapping, and then out of all of that, then being able to go back and start working with all these different groups and to just identify what is the source and how can we do better across the industry. As the main contractor on site, we seem to be burdened with waste management, even though we often don't create most of the waste. So we're just really trying to work out how can we work with our designers, the architects, the engineers, the clients, to be like, do you have to do it like this? Can we bring in some buildability or some methodology changes to build things differently? Can you spec your products differently? Can you make the most of standard sheet sizes? Just to avoid it. It's crazy how much where the waste is coming from. So
100%. I think we're all kind of amazed that you've just sifted your way through. Was it over 30 tonnes of dumpster diving waste? Kristy, tell us, was there and I know we're going to wait for the case study to come out, and we'll certainly spread the word when it does. But can you tell us, were there any surprising finds? I mean, what were the top kind of 3 things that already you're like, I can't believe we throw X away in such a great amount? Or
yeah, key ones jumping out for me so far, just timber being one of them. The amount of timber, it's
treated timber.
Treated timber. So we're based obviously down in Queenstown. Got limited infrastructure for managing waste. That's also part of the problem. Obviously, bigger centres like Auckland has got a lot more waste opportunities. But our regions. Sorry, what was that?
For recycling, you mean, when you say
yeah.
waste?
Oh, yes, yeah, for waste diversion. But our regions where we got a lot of development, a lot of construction happening, they don't have this infrastructure to help divert waste from landfill. So you're a bit hamstrung. So yeah, timber waste has been a massive one. We're trying to work through, has this been design led, or is that our site teams, or just around being efficient with how they are actually building? Other one has been PIR board off the roof. It's very, very light, so it's also opened up the argument around how do we manage construction waste? Is it by weight or is it by volume? Because if you're comparing, I don't know, 1 ton of treated timber or 1 ton of concrete versus 1 ton of PIR board or polystyrene or something else light, the volume is massively different. And it's still being buried. So yeah, PIR board, very, very light, but very volume dense.
No.
And then other ones just being products that have been coming from overseas. So finishings, so tile offcuts, fibre cement board offcuts, sports flooring offcuts. Yeah, it's just things not making the most of the standard sheet size.
Now let's just pause on that one, because you've introduced a couple of really interesting points. The first one was about the amount that's going to landfill, because of course we have something like 40% of landfill is based on construction waste, isn't it?
Yeah.
Horrendous kind of 40% legacy that we're trying to reduce, obviously. And the second point you introduced, and I'll go to you about this in a minute, Nick, is about the role of the front end of the design part of our industry's timeline. So, and we've heard this at a previous Industry Insights with Amy Marks, who also was at a previous Digicom, and she spoke very much about all waste starts with the design and in that digital space of design. So, Nick, I'm really interested in how you speak, or what you're finding with designers in terms of their role to lead this decision making around the materials that we're choosing, or the designing to standard sheet sizes, etc., so that we can reduce offcuts. I mean, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, look, certainly in the conversations that I have with architects and designers, it's quite varied, and actually probably by market segment, it's really varied. Price can become a key driver in some areas of it, but we certainly notice with the architectural type builds, they're a lot more conscious about more sustainable ways of doing things. They will choose, say, polystyrene over plastic, using recycled plastic instead of polystyrene, whereas more in the sort of the volume space, decisions get made primarily, or a lot more, I should say, around price. And look, that's not surprising, I don't think. There's a thirst out in the market for getting the most bang for buck, so to speak, when people are building houses or building projects. So we shouldn't be surprised in a way that that's a key driver. And certainly, and there are solutions out there in the market that could reduce waste, could lower embodied carbon, but at the moment they cost more. And so that's always a challenging conversation.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you go.
I was just going to say, it's a challenge for us as well in that waste space. It's quite amazing as to how much concrete gets ordered and then sent back to us because they have ordered too much.
Yeah.
And it's quite hard to know what to do with a whole bunch of concrete when it's been ordered. We spend a lot of time at our concrete plants every single day we might get a cubic metre get sent back to us because they've over-ordered. We try to find places to put that in terms of other projects where people may need a cubic metre of concrete or a 0.6 or something like that. But the reality is, unfortunately, it does have to go into some type of landfill at the same time. So we're constantly looking for ways to, I guess, get the guys on the ground to take more ownership in that. At the moment, it's very much, hey, look, they need a meter, but they'll order 1.5 just to be sure.
Across
so
the board,
yeah. So it's a challenge for us in that space as well, without a doubt. Yeah, and we can try to discourage it, but by we do charge for return concrete because there's a charge for us to get rid of it, but sometimes that's not enough either.
So that sounds like a really pragmatic way forward, which is to try and be more exact with our ordering and our quantities. I mean, what kind of tools are available for people to help them be more exact? Are we talking about digital tools, AI? I mean, how are we going to help be more exact up front so that we reduce this wastage? What have we got at our fingertips to help here?
Well, look, I think there's a lot of tools. If I can speak from Kristy, may have spent a bit of time in this space as well. I think there are already a lot of tools. The reality is we're dealing with a sort of it's not an exact science. It's probably how I'd describe it. And what I mean by that is we're digging a hole and the plan says that hole should be 300 millimeters thick, and we assume it's 300 millimeters thick, but it's not until we go to put the concrete in that we ordered that should fit in a 300 millimeter deep hole that actually it was 325 millimeters deep. So there's all those sorts of little challenges that, look, it is. Look, it's exactly that. It's the challenge, really.
I think it's a bit across. There's so many, I guess, levels to it. There's, I guess, an education bit, making sure that whoever's doing the takeoffs or the ordering or the measuring, do they know are they reading the plans accurately? Or first of all, are the plans being drawn accurately? Are they measuring accurately, taking them off? What waste allowance has been included? Some trades we have anywhere from 5 or 7% waste allowance up to 20% waste allowance. It's like, who's allowing 20% off? So we like 20% extra for waste. It's like, that's insane. And that's we did find after, I think, COVID, probably not so much for concrete, but some other materials, obviously there were massive shortages, and that created quite a bit of a scarcity sort of mindset or approach, and be like, well, heck, we're going to overorder because we don't want to run the risk of being short, which is going to obviously have flow-on effects. And well, I mean, you saw the issues with plasterboard, obviously, through COVID, and people just started stockpiling it. When you stockpile all these products, or you have more than you need, you run the risk of damaging it, of it being exposed to the weather. Or if you simply don't need it, it just becomes easier to chuck it out. Or if you've got a lot on site, then your workmanship, like, oh well, we've got plenty here, we don't need to take care around how we install it, we'll just slap it up fast. Who cares about how we're actually installing it?
So our waste management is our material management, is our site management. So we're relying very much, aren't we, on our program makers, our estimators, our site managers. Very, really critical roles at site, isn't it, to reduce the impact of this.
And I think, it's once it's embedded into every part, everyone's like, well, at Cook Brothers, I've got the sustainability hat. It's not me to drive all this. It's everyone's got a sort of a role to reducing waste or reviewing carbon or reducing carbon. It's not just one person's role or responsibility within a project.
Look, that's a really interesting point, and I know we've had some conversations before about how we each individually lead action in this space, and particularly, as you said, we've had some political changes which have changed the emphasis away from carbon counting, for example, and also recently we're seeing some changes to government procurement rules, which in turn are putting the onus back on us as individuals, or back on designers, back on site managers, back on everyone at site to make to be leaders, I guess, in the space around minimal waste. Can you tell us a bit more about what we can do as individuals, regardless of what our role is at site?
I think it's kind of just being clear on what your core sort of values are, or identifying what they are, and then implementing them in a way that is authentic to yourself or to the business. Sustainability is a sustainable business is a good business, or a good business is a sustainable business. It's kind of shouldn't have to be an extra or extra add. With what I'm trying to say.
No, I think that's good, Kristy.
Yeah.
One of the first things you said was, let's look at sustainability as more of a long-term economic, social. It's really about having a longer view over what we're doing here, which is all about the impact we're making in our neighbourhood and our region, our country. I guess there's that individual responsibility and what we can do. And the other thing I'd love to ask both of you is a little bit more about where you get your personal influence or precedence or inspiration or best practice ideas from. What could you leave as a legacy? What can you tell people who are listening and interested and to learn more in this space? Where would you point them to?
Oh, it's a challenging question for me. I mean, I'm very much I'm miles behind someone like Kristy. I'm very much learning as I go, but there are a lot of people, a lot of organisations who we look to, and I look to personally in terms of learning more in the space. And I think you've just got to soak it up as much as possible. Basically, I mean, the reality is it's a changing sort of world that we're in. And as I said, I would never have thought a few years ago I'd be sitting here from a national sales perspective for a concrete company talking about sustainability. But, the reality is we have to change and we have to transition between different times. And that's effectively what we're trying to do. So a lot of what we do is market driven, it would be fair to say. And we have to be nimble and we have to be flexible about our thinking and about how we implement things. And I guess from a concrete perspective, we're effectively the largest, we're the most used man-made product globally. And unfortunately, we're also probably the highest pollutants, I suppose, if we look at it that way, purely because of the type of product that it is. And so I think as an industry, we have to sort of lead the way. And I think they are working hard to sort of minimise their impact. So there's a lot of learnings that we can have just internally within our own industry.
Probably add, the likes of that we've got resources within the wider industry and just in New Zealand, like the New Zealand Green Building Council, great advocates just for new innovations or technology, building better, challenging or advocating for the industry and transitioning to a more of a sustainable future. But also, I guess, it's not really anyone in particular, but just having shared stories or the collaboration within the industry. We've got so many amazing experts in their fields. It's just like who have you got around the table, and inviting those as opposed to having a really siloed approach.
100%, I agree.
I think when we start having more collaborative or engaged or processes that widening our scope or widening the lens, you're going to get better outcomes just naturally by that.
Great. And tell me, are you guys using any digital tools, or are there any particular apps or online calculators or places you go to use regularly?
Look, for us, EPD, obviously we use the EPD model a lot.
Yep.
And certainly around EPD on demand, we've got our own internal calculators that we use for that. A lot of our slab design systems, we have all of those thermally modelled, so we use thermal modelling for that, which is done by Jason in Wellington. So he does a lot of work in that space. We have thermal modelling calculators and things like that. That's probably, for us, it's probably where it ends. We don't use a lot of I wouldn't say we use a lot of external stuff. Most of it's internally created outside of the likes of EPD.
Oh, Kristy, are you using any digital tools?
Yes and no. I'm still personally trying to find a carbon footprint calculator that is easy to use. And I think that's creating part of the confusion. It's all this information. It's not that readily available. I stand to be corrected if someone has a great tool to let me know. But it's like, how do you distill this really complex information down into something that's actually tangible for your teams on site? It's from a carbon calculator, but also the likes of BIM is a fantastic tool just to improve in design and identifying clashes, measuring and takeoffs. I think it's got a carbon footprint add-on that you can spit out emission totals. There's so much potential here. You can do digital twins to use that as a model to compare, I guess, what you're going to build or an alternative with, and information like that you can then put forward to your clients. And you can, because I guess when you're trying to, at the end of the day, they are paying for the project. They want to know what they're getting. How can you translate all this information into something that they can understand? Because what does it really mean? Yeah.
Absolutely. At our Digicon conference in March in Tamaki, Auckland, we heard about the archives project and the digital twin, and that's amazing what they can do to verify each element from a facilities management point of view.
Absolutely.
In terms of operation. Yeah, great operating cost benefit value, I guess. So there's a lot of arguments or value proposition for why we would do more sustainable construction processes. And I guess a number of those are related to how we might explain or help people see the economic value case for a long-term view, which are very much wrapped up around ownership, aren't they? Do you find yourself having those influence type conversations, or what kind of components or things are you making people aware of in that space?
Sorry, was that directed initially to me, Pamela? You just cut out there for a second.
I'm just throwing questions out.
Throwing it out there. Look, for me personally, it's in the sustainability space, and I should say it's some parts of our market we never talk about it. It's just not on their radar. And in other parts of the market, it's constantly on their radar, and we are talking about ways that they can improve or lower their embodied carbon numbers versus by using different products, different techniques, better value engineering, which we provide value engineering services. I think one of the big things that we have, and we talk about price, but it's making sure that the right people with the right expertise are involved in the communication side of things in terms of what improvements can be made. Kristy sort of touched on it before, is that sometimes decisions get made without talking to the right people, and that can lead to sort of bad outcomes, or outcomes that maybe at the very beginning look like they're the right thing to do, but the reality is actually there could have been a better way or a more sustainable way of doing it without actually adding any costs. And certainly when you look at low carbon concrete, in some markets you can make a decision to move to low carbon concrete and it will cost you nothing. It's almost like, well, why don't we just do that? The reality is it's just, it's change. We're not too big on change in the construction industry. It takes a little bit of time, but I think we're getting there. And I think the external market, actually, the customer, actually, one thing that I would say over the last couple of years, especially, is they are a lot more informed than what they were. And we do hear of a customer might come to us and say, look, this customer here says they don't want to use polystyrene. These are the reasons why. What are the alternatives? So I think the more that happens, the better it will be.
Great. So we've all got a role to play in informing the customer, and an informed customer is a dream customer by the sound. Kristy, what would you add in terms of how you communicate that value prop?
or what's something we're trying to, it's we're still working on how to identifying the short-term versus the long-term costs, because unfortunately sometimes a more sustainable or a greener option might be more expensive upfront. But if you take an actual life cycle, long-term approach of the building and the development, I mean, we're building for, heck, 50, 60 years. We should be looking at the life cycle, lifetime price. Then that's when you start seeing it's actually cheaper to build this way. If you're only looking at the upfront, what this is going to cost me in the next, couple of years, then and then that's where things get cut, unfortunately. So just trying to educate the clients to be like, look at the bigger picture as opposed to your short-term gains versus long-term wins. And just highlighting that it's how we build. And questioning why do they need some things? I don't know if you need questioning what I'm trying to say. Sorry, I'm stumbling on my words now. Sorry.
It's all good. You're talking about operational cost. And one of the things we were talking about before is, of course, we're trying to convince sometimes clients who are developing and then selling, so they're not bearing the benefits, I guess, of a reduced operational cost. But there needs to be a language or a way to communicate that this building is going to have low operational cost. So that's where tools like or signifiers like neighbours, NABERS, Green Star, Home Star. That's where a common language is useful, isn't it? And I guess the point about how we are measuring and communicating carbon, we haven't yet arrived at that common language. Therefore, it's difficult for us to talk about that and measure it, and then evaluate how we're doing, benchmark it, because we haven't yet arrived at that common language. But hopefully we'll come together or create some leadership in that space before too long. I guess I would like to ask you both about if there was one single change you could make or something you've seen offshore that we could adopt here locally. If there was one thing that you think would enable us to make this process of construction more sustainable, what would that be? Just if I was a genie in a bottle. Nick, what would your one be?
I mean, there's some real big, easy ones, but the reality. Look, I had this conversation with certainly in some spaces where with suppliers who provide more sustainable building options. I have this conversation a lot. The reality is, whether we agree with it or not, without legislation, it's hard to see some significant change happening. And I guess what I mean by that is that unless someone makes a courageous decision to say we will not use this or we cannot do this anymore, the reality is price will always be a big factor. And I shouldn't say always, because there's clearly people out there who are definitely designing and building and making a difference. But it's hard to see some significant change without legislation getting involved, if I'm being brutally honest. Certainly from our space, from my sort of side of things anyway,
So I hear that your genie looks like a courageous decision maker. That's what you're looking for. Kristy, what about your vision?
I'd probably say the same. More direction around the whole top-down, bottom-up sort of alignment. And I think without more direction in terms of how is our building code set up, how are our urban planning, our town planning, how are our towns designed, what are the parameters around who's actually responsible for how things work, what goes into our buildings, how we monitor and measure and track. Talking about carbon, there's no standard system, so everyone tracks it slightly different, so there's no consistency there. The building code, trying to get something that's a little bit outside the box, it's quite hard. Like, there's some really cool, innovative options out there, but in order to actually implement it on site, I guess from a design perspective, the team have got to jump through hoops, which is a massive barrier from a cost, from time, and it's like, well, I just won't do it. so it's that whole legislative, that's probably about 5 different legislations that yeah, but that whole legislative space, or how we operate within, needs to be reviewed. Yeah.
Nice. So alongside Nick's courageous decision maker, I'm hearing, Kristy, that you want clarity and consistency in the way that our code regulations are administered, and communicated. I think clarity and consistency around code and legislation in general is something that industry does advocate for consistently and clearly. So you can feel assured that that is definitely happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, folks, is there anything else you want to add before I sum up? Is there anything you would want to suggest to anyone listening? If someone wanted to get into a sustainability type role as you have, is there anything that you would suggest that they do?
I would have just said, just come at it from a and probably for any role that you're in, to come at it from a systems or a systems approach. Everything is so connected, and if you're only looking at one thing, then, or taking a really siloed approach to it, it's going to become quite hard. It's really expensive. It becomes an add-on, it's extra. You're pushing things uphill. If you can take a systems approach to everything that you do, from designing a building to delivering a building to managing a team, I think that's where you get your biggest impact.
Yeah, and look, I would just simply say, look, just be open-minded, be prepared to learn, be challenged in some of your thinking, which is certainly what's happened to me over the last couple of years. It would be fair to say, and look, just as I say, be as open-minded and as pragmatic as possible, really.
Love it. Be open, be curious, be looking at the system. So we're going to wrap up now, and what I'll let folks know is that we will have this recording on the resources page of our refreshed website. We will add in there a number of URLs, links to any of the things that Nick and Kristy have mentioned, and when Kristy's dumpster diving case study comes out, we'll be making sure we spread that far and wide. We're going to make sure you really get a lot of mileage for all that hard work that you did in there, evaluating all that waste. Look, just a couple of last things. I did mention that our Building People Award nominations are open. We do want people to put in either yourself or someone you know. There are health, safety, wellbeing, there are innovation, there are lots of areas where sustainability fits in. There are different size project awards. Please try and put forward yourself or your friends, your colleagues. You can put forward groups of up to 3 people for the projects this year. Our series of Building Legends workshops are also online now, and they're running through June, July and September. And the first one is on mastering early contractor involvement, ECI, demystifying ECI, and other delivery models, which we're seeing more of. There'll also be workshops around leadership and culture and navigating industry guidance and updates, of which we seem to be lots out there, including 3910, which is our new commercial construction contract. So the next time we'll be online for Industry Insights is on the 7th of May. We'll be doing a deep dive into health, safety and wellbeing with Natalie Ortega from Massey, Michaela Murray from Cook Brothers and Antonia Savalio from Hawkins. So that'll be lots of fun, and we'll look forward to seeing you all then. Thanks for joining us, Kristy and Nick. It's lovely to see you both, and we'll see you next time. Ka kite anō.
Thank you.
Thank you.